Barcelona v Real Madrid. We're gonna take a step back in time just to give you a bit of context on this story, because Barcelona versus Real Madrid, El Clasico, was at risk with La Liga clubs considering a strike over TV rights deal. This was from February 20th, 2015. The biggest fixture in European football at that time was under threat, with Spanish clubs willing to strike over the television rights deal. El Clasico could have been postponed after Spanish clubs threatened to go on strike over La Liga's television rights deal. Spain's current carve-up of television money sees the majority of the cash go to Real Madrid and Barcelona, with each club able to negotiate their own individual deals. Sick of the arrangement favouring the nation's big two, the LFP, Professional Football League, gave the Spanish government 15 days to approve a newly proposed law regulating any future sales of television rights. Now, the new regulations would mean that the league would have to agree to collective bargaining like the English Premier League. But with the government reluctant to get involved, clubs are threatening to strike, with the Clásico weekend targeted for the biggest impact. Spanish clubs are envious of the riches garnered by English clubs and their own league's duopoly, with the angry majority now willing to use strong-arm tactics to get a bigger piece of the pie. Minister for Sport Miguel Cardenal had promised a resolution in November, but after several months of inaction, the league's president Javier Tebas called an extraordinary general meeting for March 4th, in which strike action would be discussed, while sources in Spain told Mirror Football at the time that the weekend of March 23rd, El Clasico, would be the most likely chosen for the strike. Tebas had just returned from Argentina at that point and was pushing the government again for a response. Now, fast forward a couple months to May 6th, 2015. The Spanish Football Federation says it is suspending indefinitely all end-of-season games in disputes with the government, including over TV rights. The Federation statement said it was also unhappy with receiving only 4.55% of pool's revenue, though it said it was still open to dialogue. All matches will be suspended from the 16th of May, including the domestic cup final. In the top division, Barcelona lead La Liga rivals Real Madrid by 2 points with only 3 games left to play. Now, in the statement, the RFEF Federation said it had acted after 3 months of talks with the government had failed to resolve the dispute, as we mentioned. It said more than 600,000 players and more than 30,000 matches across the country would be affected by the suspension. However, it stressed at the same time, and yet again, we reiterate the offer of dialogue to the Spanish government. The RFEF acted after the government last week approved a new law on collective bargaining for TV rights. The law, which still needs to be approved by Parliament, aims to regulate the rights to broadcast matches in Spain's first and second divisions. The government has so far made no public comment on the Federation's statement. The initial assumption is that this move has been taken in an attempt to head off a player strike, which had been threatened for that weekend, said Andy West, a Spanish football expert. Players are unhappy with some of the terms of the deal, including the low percentage of revenue on offer to lower league clubs. The issue of TV rights is a long-running one, with most people recognising that Barca and Real receive far too much at the moment. Realigning is not easy, though, Mr. West added. So, May 7th, the question was asked. Spanish football suspended. Is the season really over? Hang with us, we've still got quite a bit more of this story, because Spanish football, as said, will be suspended from the 16th of May. And as said, essentially, the suspension is the result of a power struggle over who runs Spanish football. It's the climax of a long-running dispute over the distribution of television revenue. But it is one of them was basically who's involved. The LFP, National Professional Football League, responsible for running Spain's top 2 professional divisions. The RFEF, the Spanish Football Federation, Spain's football and governing body, equivalent to the FA in England. The Spanish government, and the AFE, the Spanish Players Association, represents the interests of Spanish footballers. Now, there's still quite a bit more in this, but as said, even before the RFEF's announcement, the Players Association had already threatened to launch a strike previously. But it is a case of is a case of the showcase occasion of their own competition, basically, from the RFEF. They're not taking it lightly because Barcelona, the Copa del Rey final between Barcelona and Athletic Bilbao, scheduled for Saturday, May 30th, same day as the FA Cup final, where we'll be on Wembley Way, is now under threat. Another danger and an explicit threat in the RFEF's action is that governmental interference in football's administration is prohibited by the game's global body FIFA. The RFEF is suggesting that the Spanish government is doing just that, which could in a worst case scenario see Spain banned from international competitions, and we've seen Nigeria suffer that kind of fate with being banned. So it's one of them ones. We're gonna come back to that one definitely. And the prospect of FIFA's involvement is made more likely by the fact that RFEF's president Angel Maria Villa also happens to be a FIFA vice president and a long-time ally of Sepp Blatter. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of discussions over the next few days, but the key remaining fixtures that might actually will be affected: Atletico Madrid v Barcelona and Espanyol v Real Madrid. If Barcelona win, they win the title. But there's also the issue of Barcelona v Deportivo and Real Madrid versus Getafe on May 23rd, and also the Copa del Rey final as well. So it's a case of you can't necessarily end the season without champions, but it's one of them was you'd hope that this would get cleaned up. But something that's actually come out today, this afternoon as it happens, May 11th, 2015, court could decide on action. A Spanish court could decide on Wednesday if the strike affecting the end of La Liga is legal. The Spanish Football Federation suspended the end of the season, and the Players Union, AFA, also decided to strike in a row over TV rights. So, Barcelona, I said, are only one game from wrapping up the league. So it'd be one of them ones next Sunday. If the game is played, if they beat Atletico Madrid, the current champions, then they win the league. But it is one of them was the AFE and LFP have been summoned to make a court appearance on Wednesday. A league spokesperson has confirmed. Now, huge. Another bit of huge news, because at the end of the day, I mean, La Liga, the season may not finish. It all depends, but Wednesday is going to be very interesting now in terms of La Liga, a lot more interesting than it really should be. In terms of this, you can see, I mean, a lot of us have seen for a number of years that the way TV rights are divided in Spain is utterly unfair. It's pretty much 90% goes to Real Madrid and Barca, and the other 10% is just split among the rest of the sides, which is completely unfair. I mean, you look at in the Premier League, it's a lot more even, where like you start dividing it down in terms of league positions. But the fact of the matter is, that's why there's a duopoly in Spanish football. I mean, every now and then you get a team who breaks it. We've seen Valencia do it temporarily. We saw Deportivo do it temporarily. Atletico even, can be said, have done it temporarily. But the fact of the matter is, it's not good for the game. It's not good for the game in general for all of the money to be going up to the top and staying there. And we've said this in regards to the Premier League, where it's not good because of the £5.1 billion TV deal for the Premier League. What does the Football League get? So it's one of them ones where it is concerning, but I'm actually glad that these football associations are actually willing enough and they're actually serious enough about trying to get collective bargaining into La Liga and the distribution of TV rights, that they're willing to strike for it. Because if you're willing to take something seriously enough that you're willing to strike for it, then hell, I think it's fantastic. So it's one of them ones. I see this as potentially a good thing, but it's a case of the collective bargaining thing has to happen. But my concern would be that Spain could end up getting banned, because if the government intervenes, government intervention is not allowed, it's prohibited. I said, as we've seen Nigeria fall foul of this before, where they're getting banned from tournaments because of government interference. So it's one of them ones we've seen that happen before. So FIFA are not just idle threats in that regard. But I think this is one of them ones where if this doesn't get resolved on Wednesday, then how long will it drag on? And obviously seasons have to end at a specific time. So what happens if this drags on for a few months? Does La Liga end with no champion? Does it end as is? Is the strike even legal? That's one of the questions that obviously is going to be attempted to be answered at this court hearing on Wednesday. Is the strike even legal in terms of what they're doing? So, I mean, I can understand the reasoning behind it, but if you're contravening the law, then it leaves so much open to question. But as I said, the distribution of TV rights is actually a borderline disgrace over in La Liga. It really is. I mean, Gezzie Fizzle, do you want to jump in on this?
Well, I have to say it's absolutely massive. I mean, you're talking about one of the most highly publicized leagues in the world of football. And, you know, the mere fact that this is the action that they've come to is massive news.
Has it come to this? Oh.
Yes, it has.
Original striking material. Lockdown La Liga.
And at the same time, you know, it needs to be said that really this hasn't happened overnight. This isn't part of, you know, what's known as the suddenly syndrome. It hasn't just suddenly occurred. No, this has been happening and building for a while now. In that, when you look at it, as you say, it is a duopoly in Spain, with the occasional anomaly in a team that will come in and break it up for a certain period of time, and even then it's not extended, right? So with that being said, it's important, because really what happened with La Liga is that it was really a mirror of the Scottish Premier League. That's what it was. It was pretty much exactly the same in that when Rangers were in their pomp, you know, under the circumstances, see what I did there? There was it was really just a matter of, you know, either Celtic or Rangers winning the SPL and no one else. And generally speaking, in La Liga, it has been Real Madrid or Barcelona, and pretty much, generally speaking, no one else. You know, and in terms of the money that's involved, yes, you know, in terms of the two most commercially successful teams in Spain, Barcelona and Real Madrid are those two teams. But the reason for that, mainly, in my opinion, is because that's where all the money is gone. You know, the money hasn't been given equally to the teams, or even tiered to say, right, you know, if at a given season you finish first, you will get this percentage, second gets this percentage, you know, the relegated clubs will get this percentage paid out over this amount of time. None of that is in place. So it's very, very difficult, you know, for teams to remain competitive for an extended period. So when you go and look at when, you know, Valencia superseded those two teams, you have to think, what happened there? Well, it was a bunch of academy players that had come through, that had played together at lower levels, in terms of youth and the B teams, that continued to have that were brought into the side, and they were integrated, you know, more than any other outside import that allowed them to do that. You know, you look at Atletico now, and yes, they're spending a little bit of money, having, you know, had money from having to sell, you know, key players like Fernando Torres, Radamel Falcao, David De Gea, just to name a few, consistently over the years. But when they did actually, you know, pose a threat previously and now, it's a matter of, this is a group of players that we were brought in for small transfer fees, or players that had actually come up through the youth, and then that's how it's been done. But I think overall, it's very much going to affect It's very much going to affect what happens going forward. So, as you say, the big question is, what happens to the season? Does it end as is if it's not resolved on Wednesday? I would say probably, because when are you going? When is the time going to be made to resolve this?
Yeah.
In terms of playing the remaining games, it probably won't be made.
But that's the massive concern, though. It's like, are they going to come to a resolution? I mean, it's a case of, are they going to come to a resolution on Wednesday, or is the strike going to happen? And if the strike does happen, then hell, when is the season going to end? How is it going to end?
This is it. And when does the new season start? That's the other thing that we're not even talking about.
Yeah.
Because we're focused on this season ending. Well, if there is a strike and it does go on for however long, when does the new season start? Would that season be truncated? You know, does that mean that the team that wins the Liga for that season, do they have an asterisk against that particular trophy because of the shortened season? You know, let's not forget about the effect on the players. Right? This is one thing that we haven't spoken about, the effect on the players and the coaches. So if there is a strike, you know, the players are going to need time to get up to speed. The coaches are going to need time to get up to speed. Where does that time come from? You know, in terms of how a season is structured in professional sports, everything is so regimental and orchestrated. Once you start to take those things out, things fall by the wayside. You know, so as I say, that there's massive knock-on effects of this strike. So I think for all of the key parties, it is very important that, you know, a resolution is struck. Now, ideally, the resolution for me would be that, yes, you know, you look at the television money and how it's currently being distributed, and you have a staggered structure in place. You know, it would remind me something of the collective bargaining agreement for the rookie wage scale in the NFL, in terms of the NFL draft when rookies come in. So prior to the recent collective bargaining agreement, rookies could get paid whatever, you know, depending on how good their agent was, especially if they went in the first round. Right? And that upset a lot of veteran players. So when the collective bargaining agreement was put in place, it was like, listen, we don't want these players that haven't really, you know, earned their scars or their stripes in our league to be able to get all this money and then flame out. You know, it needs to be put in place that, okay, if you're a rookie, you can come in. We're not saying that if you go in the first round or as a top 4, top 10 picks, that you can't get some semblance of money. Yes, you can. But in terms of what you pay a veteran, no. there has to be some sort of scale here. And it has to be, you know, weighed in the favor of the veteran. So now the way that rookies are paid are very, very different, and it's much more manageable in terms of the salary cap for NFL teams. And I would like to see something similar for Spanish football, and of course the Premier League, in that it will end up balancing itself out. In that, okay, you have to finish at a certain level, but in terms of the payments, rather than the top 2 getting, you know, the biggest slices of the pie, you know, there's enough to go around for everybody.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You know, and what that means in terms of player development in the future. You know, we talk about how Spain, Germany, to a lesser extent Italy and Holland, how they have, you know, these conveyor belts of young talent. All that this means, if these other clubs get more money, is that they're able to go and produce more talent for the national team, because the money can be invested in those areas. Whereas right now, right, if you look at the rest of La Liga and you look at the national team squad, where do most of the players come from?
But then we know the reason why that most of the Spanish team's players come from Real Madrid and Barcelona, because basically they're the only ones who have the money to invest in their youth structures and
this is precisely my point,
which is a disgrace, to be honest.
So once that is resolved, you know, in my ideal bargaining agreement here for the new proposed TV rights, it means that you'll end up having more investment from these other clubs, and that's really where they're going to make the difference in the investment in youth. So that, you know, in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, you'll have more players from other clubs as well as those players at Real Madrid and Barcelona representing the national squad for Spain. Yeah,
you'd have them as regulars rather than being just anomalies.
Of course.
And at the end of the day, that would be good for the Spanish game.
Absolutely.
Then you get other clubs developing players. You get them catching up to the levels of Barcelona and Real Madrid, and potentially it even makes. I mean, one of the end games, it could make for a more exciting league where you're not just looking at only two teams winning it most years, and a team surprising everyone every few years and then falling off again. Like, where are Deportivo nowadays? Where are Valencia? I mean, it's one of them ones you got looking at that. So, I mean, I'm hoping that this comes to a good resolution for all the clubs involved, not just those top two, not just the elite two, I should say.